All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond, Season 3, Episode 12. Fun fact about this episode, by the time this will be released, this will be my 100th episode. So whew, we made it, y'all. We made it. We made it. But before I get started, thank you all for the support, all the kind words, not just supporting me, but supporting the guests who've been on here, following the work that they're doing, supporting whatever they're doing, and so forth. So thank you so much. From my last podcast that I released with Deanna J Speaks, so many comments came in. I really appreciate that. Keep them coming. They help me stay motivated to continue to do this work. So thank you so much. If you have happened to stumble across this podcast, made it through season one or just happened to just start it here for some reason. My name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent approximately 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system. First off on the juvenile justice side, and then out on the foster care side. I started advocating at the age of 15. Have been working professionally within child welfare from many different positions and many different ranges um, for 11 years. So that's why I'm here today. That's why this space is here today. But you guys aren't here for me. So without further ado, I'm gonna have my guests introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Arminta Damken-Navarro. I also go by Armi. Most people know me by Armi. I am a former juvenile justice youth. I should have been involved in child welfare, but I was not. My home situation was very unstable. I had a bunch of trauma happen to me throughout my childhood until till I turned 19. So yeah, I got into advocacy through a local state group that I now facilitate. And yeah, I don't want to say too much.
Awesome. It's a pleasure having you on. I really appreciate you being in this space with me today. And hopefully we can, you know, uh, have fun, laugh, joke, but also be able to help educate and provide a space for you to share and feel however way you want to feel. With that being said, my first question dives a little bit deep. It kind of touches on a little bit of your introduction, but to the best of your ability, could you help myself and the audience understand the timeline of your life leading to now?
So, starting when I was a very small child, I was 4 years old. I had no idea what was happening. Um, I was being sexually abused. I didn't know what it was. I was also groomed. So anytime that it would happen, I would get a toy and I would be told that I was a good girl. And that happened up until I was 12 years old. And I was finally able to recognize that what that person was doing was not right. And I was able to tell somebody and, sort of start up the process of going through legal avenues to get it resolved. Um, Around my kindergarten age, I was maybe 6 years old. I saw my mom um, she was in a very abusive relationship. And so she was trying to leave one day. She was trying to get her keys from this guy, and he had pushed her, and we were outside. He was in his car. His car was running. He pushed her. Her leg got caught underneath the tire. And so he drove over her leg. That was traumatizing to see as a child. But from 12 on, my mom, she got married when I was about 12 years old to my stepdad, who is now deceased. Um, and when I was 14, I ran away from home due to some things that my mother had said. And I was approached by the police, and they told me that they were going to take me home, and I refused. And they said that we could go the easy way or the hard way. And The way that they approached me is it was all men. There was no female officers, and they came up to me, and I was sitting. I was calm. I wasn't being a menace to society or anything. But they approached me the way they approached me. They started to grab me from where I was sitting, and so I fought back. And so I was charged with 3 counts of assault on a peace officer, which led me to getting into the juvenile justice system, going and um, getting into residential treatment programs. And when I had run away, um, I had a concussion. So they kind of agitated that concussion that I had already had. So, I mean, obviously, in that whole scenario, I was not in my right mind at all, but I didn't know how to express that there were things that were going on at home, and that's why I did not want to go there. Around 15, 16, um, I was sexually abused by my stepfather. And so I ran away from home again. Mind you, I'm on juvenile probation. And so I violated the terms of my probation and I was sent back to juvenile detention. And I was finally able to speak up on that at detention. I had gotten close with one of the staff members while I was waiting for a residential facility. And I was able to tell them what happened and get that taken care of. But it was unfounded because of a discrepancy between dates, which I think is something that is a huge issue in my state, is that they will take minor details and they will not find things based on minor discrepancies. If you go through something traumatic, it's kind of hard to keep your dates exactly how they want it. So that was unfortunately unfounded, but luckily my probation officer, she believed me. So when I was in residential treatment, she did not let me go back home. So I went into a supervised apartment living program. And from there, I aged out of the system at 18. And now somehow I'm here today, even with all of that crazy stuff that happened in my childhood. And I'm thriving and doing way better than I could have ever seen myself doing at 14, 15 years old.
Wow, thank you for sharing. And if you don't mind, I have a couple questions so we can like kind of unpack that a little bit more
Mhm.
for the audience listening, and maybe there's somebody out there that may be listening that this is connecting to their own individual story. But before I get there, I want to stretch out this timeline a little. So how old are
Mhm.
you today? If you don't
Uh,
mind me asking.
it's okay. I'm 21.
You are 21. Okay. So I'm assuming you aged out at 18.
Mhm.
Um, experiencing a lot of different residentials. I'm assuming when you, as you said, when you aged out, you wasn't in a residential facility. You were in like a kind of independent living. So you had time to kind of decompress from being in those secure kind of facilities, but still kind of coming out of a system controlling your life until
Mhm.
18. What did that look like for you? How did that feel? Um, and more so.
Going from supervised apartment living, so there's 2 versions of SAL in the state of Iowa. I'll refer to supervised apartment living as SAL,
Mm,
just for the listeners because it's so much easier to say. It rolls off the tongue better. Um, so there's a cluster site and then there's a scatter site. So the location that I initially went into was the cluster site, and it's just a bunch of other youth in kind of like a dorm-like setting. And
hmm.
we have staff members and they take us grocery shopping and they help us, with homework and getting jobs and finishing school and all of that. They keep us accountable. At the same time, we had a level of independence that we may not have had before.
Hmm.
So we could go out whenever we wanted, as long as it wasn't school hours. We couldn't skip school or anything. We'd lose some privileges, and basically be kind of grounded. Um, but in that cluster setting, I had a lot of independence. I did get into some more trouble, because it was newfound independence. I was 17 years old. I was
Mm,
freshly 17. So, I still had that mindset of like, I'm a teenager, but I know what's best for me.
right.
And so I ended up hanging out with the wrong crowd that were staying at the cluster site. Um, Luckily, I didn't get any extra charges. So that's good. I was very upfront and honest with my probation officer when I did things wrong because I was really afraid of disappointing her. Because at that point, she was somebody that I looked up to and that I respected highly. So from there, also at age 17, just a few months after I had entered this program, I went into Scatter Site, which is this group of apartments that is blocked off for youth who are in the system. And so I was able to age out in my own apartment. I had a job. I actually had two jobs. I had graduated early. I was supposed to graduate in 2020. I graduated in February of 2019. And I kind of excelled at having my own apartment and managing my finances and all of that fun stuff up until I turned 18. Mind you, I was 17 in my own apartment. So, I still had that I want to get crazy kind of mindset. Um, but yeah, it was definitely very different from being in a residential setting that's very secured and very micromanaged, very staff managed, lots of staff, to going to two staff. It was like a two staff to six youth ratio. And I mean, we didn't have very many youth in the program, and I think the max was six youth. So the level of independence going from super secure to less secure to completely on my own with only the occasional meeting once a month was definitely eye-opening and shocking, and I had no idea what to do with myself. I had to find ways to fill my time and be healthy about it because I have a history of not doing healthy things when I'm bored. So that's kind of how that was. I did love the freedom though. I loved being able to do my own thing, not have a curfew, not have to worry about getting grounded because at that point I'm an adult.
Thank you for sharing that a little bit more. Now, I want to take a few steps back. You mentioned experiencing abuse in your environment and also to you at a very young age. So at that point, it's fair to say, this had became something of normalcy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to ask because sometimes, I want to choose my words wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, when we go into the system, and we're in the system care, much like how you entered, the stigmas, the labels are automatically pressed on you. There's no one trying to figure out, okay, why is this child doing these behaviors? Why does this child not want to go home? You know, um, but also getting into the residential side. So you experienced that at home. That was your home environment.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty sporadic, other stuff going on. When you entered into residential, and I ask this question to most people who experience residential facilities. What was that atmosphere like for you? And did you feel safer?
Um, in certain aspects, I think I did feel safer. Like I didn't have to face my abusers every day. Um, some would say that things that my mother has done have been psychologically or emotionally abusive because she wasn't very physically abusive. Um, so I mean, just not having her negative like opinions or ideologies or anything of me and facing that day to day and beating myself down over like what she thinks that I should be, that definitely made me feel safe. But on the other side of that, there were a lot of things that I feel like people do not talk about residential. There in the residential treatments that I stayed at, there's this thing called PREA, which stands for Prison Rape Elimination Act,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a safeguard against staff members to youth, youth to youth, or witnessing staff member to staff member sexual acts. And I know of cases that happened. only afterwards. But the placement itself, there were a lot of fights. It was an all-girls facility, so there were a lot of fights. There was um, a lot of male staff to female youth. Like, there were not a lot of female staff. So in a way, I felt kind of intimidated, and there were some staff that reminded me of my stepdad. So that was kind of hard to face. But they were some of the best staff that I had ever met versus the ones that were younger who, were too close in age to the youth. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
those were ones I tried to avoid because of the things that I had heard and also the cases of restraints. Um, restraints are very high. They don't need to have like an extreme cause. You could make like a simple movement of disrespect and they would restrain you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, I had bruises on me. I was shoved into the carpet at one point and I had like scrapes on my face. That's kind of embarrassing when you think about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I felt safe, but I also didn't feel as safe as I would have if I had a more nurturing, more trauma-informed environment.
Yeah, I asked that question with intention because there are cases where individuals are on the juvenile side of things and they're moved and it's better than home. There are some, and I say some very lightly, but also you guys have already heard my story of being in the juvenile side, being treated and being called a menace to society. So it wasn't safe. Like I was fighting for my life almost every day. um, but it's just I don't want you guys to just hear that one side. So when I get the opportunity to ask someone else who's entered in the juvenile side, but very much could have been on the foster care side, but due to whatever, that did not happen. Um, so I asked that question because it's important to share those stories, but also there's a lot of people because there are still a lot of residential facilities still operating out of old ways. And hiring, and because you mentioned it, I'm gonna speak on it. Hiring these young staff, putting them through 2 weeks of training to be trauma informed and expecting them to know how to process or deal with individuals who have dealt with high intense trauma that has caused behavior issues in their lives. And I'm not excusing either way, but I'm just saying it takes a certain level. That's why you call individuals youth care workers, corrections officers, or youth specialists, because it's very much a specialist job to be able to handle individuals either on the foster care side or on the juvenile side that have experienced trauma. Because you have to have the certain level of temperament and patience. Um, and to be real, and I know some people out there, I ain't gonna deal with too many people calling me a B word, this, that, and the third. But look, I've been spit on and had something thrown at. I've been hit in the face, had a black eye, and had to come back and work with the same kid who gave me the black eye. But there's a certain level of understanding that kid wasn't angry at me. I just was the person who took the brunt of it. you know, and not excusing that individual's behavior because definitely he should know how to handle his emotions better. But who has taught him? And
Mhm.
that's a lot of the answer when it comes to youth that has the spirit. Who has been the example of better? Um, and a lot of times, even speaking as you were leading 17 and stuff like that, yeah, you have learned some things, but still, there was a level of getting into adulthood that provided more stability than anything else in your childhood.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, I want to segue. I want to segue into more so that adulthood, and you in your working space. You do a lot of advocacy now, and you're well in this work. But before I get to asking you deeply about that advocacy, tying both together, when did mental health and self-care play a part? And what did it look like as you were young, going throughout that system, enduring what you were enduring, aging out, to your regular life now, and what you have learned, what you have created for self, or that you're still trying to build?
So I would say around 17, mental health started to actually make more sense to me. My mental health was not great. It never really had been. Um, I'm gonna say something sensitive here, and afterwards, I'm just gonna like once our podcast is over, I just want to share that there are resources out there, um, in case anybody gets triggered by anything that I say within this podcast. But I had a issue with self-harm from the age of 10 to the age of, I would say, I've been about a year without self-harming. Um, but when I was 17, I had um, the worst injurious behavior than I had ever had before, and it required me to go to the hospital and to get stitches, and I still can't feel that area, because I did hit a nerve. But, um, at 17 is when it really became, like, something that I needed to change. I started going to therapy. I don't go to therapy anymore, but it's because of moves and all of that, but, I do have people that I talk to, so I'm not completely alone and completely just sitting with my thoughts, just to throw that out there. But I started going to therapy. I started taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, and I started working on my negative self-talk and turning that into positive self-talk. So I would try and catch myself being negative towards myself. And so up until I was 20-ish, yes, I was 20. Um, I did have, like, the occasional I would go for a while without doing anything to harm myself, and then I would have, like, this instance of, like, just a serious anger towards myself or to a situation that I was going through, and I wouldn't think I would just do. And those situations are dangerous because you can't really catch yourself, um, at least in my experience, I wasn't able to catch myself in the act, so I couldn't, like, stop myself. But luckily, I have been about, July of last year, so about a year and 2, 3 months, without any self-injurious behavior, and I found a new medication that really works for me. Um, so focusing on that and making sure that I take care of myself, uh, as I've from about 20 to now, I started focusing more on self-care because I started getting into, more working with youth who have a higher ACEs score or, um, who have RAD diagnoses and things like that. So I had to make sure that while working in those environments, I was also taking care of myself so that I could be helpful for them.
I really appreciate you being comfortable and vulnerable and sharing that, because that's very real. Like, a lot of people, if you don't mind me saying, a lot of people
Yeah.
think you can be doing this work and your life is picture perfect. Like, you're not working on anything in your personal, like you have solely reached the epitome of self-care and you are just out here. But the reality is, you know, a lot of advocates, a lot of motivational speakers, a lot of preachers, a lot of leaders are constantly working on something within their individual life. Um, and reality is healing, there are spaces where you can heal completely over something, but healing is a journey.
Mhm.
And it really ain't a linear one. It
Right.
can take you through some loops, it's some roundabouts and everything. Um, but also like a lot of times people take time and I'll use myself as an example. Um, I had to go through a few things to realize I needed to work on a few things. Like I didn't know I had to work on it because it like reality is growing up, like you just keep going.
You just
You know,
survive.
yeah, you keep going, you survive and stuff like that. So like throughout life, there are things that are brought to my attention about myself, either through my own observation or through people who have built relationships with me, and they'd be like, "Michael, look, you know you do this," you know, and that has been through friendships, you know, dealing with family, but also I think I have learned the most coming out of the system, and this is a very vulnerable space from relationships,
Mhm.
intimate relationships, and pursuing, you know, that and what have you. I've learned the most from those failings, being completely honest, um, outside of any other relationship I've had, because those have put me in a very vulnerable space, in a very open space to really see things, um, from a very clear lens. Um, but speaking of which, you you're doing advocacy now. You're working in a space. You're very close with individuals who have very much gone through what you have experienced. How do you balance that from your week to week? You know, and just like, look, I, I don't got all the answers, but I'm here.
Um, I try and relate without re-traumatizing the
Mhm.
person. So, it really depends on what space I'm in. So I
Okay.
do, like you said, I do a lot of advocacy. I've been a panelist, I have been a moderator, and I've been a facilitator. And I, have traveled. I've been a guest at summits and conferences, and just being there and just learning more on how to better do the work that I do. Even if
Mhm.
it's things that I already know, it's good to expand on that and get different perspectives from other people.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've gone East Coast and I've gone West Coast. So I've been
Mhm.
on both sides and including the Midwest where I reside. So balancing it really just comes down to what space I'm in. If I'm one on one with somebody, or if I'm talking on the phone, or just kind of promoting my foster group, it all comes down to who I'm talking to, what they would like to know, and that kind of goes with how much I'll share, um, just so I can have some little tidbit of information that the new youth can resonate with or can understand, like, hey, this person does have lived experience. Whereas the person who's formerly in my role did not have lived experience and couldn't really understand exactly what these youth may have been coming from. And now that I'm in this role and I have the ability to do what I do, and I get so many opportunities to continue, you know, balancing it all out. Um, yeah, that it's I kind of lost my train of thought there. I'm not gonna lie to you,
No, you
but
okay?
it's all about the space. It's all about the people. So I don't really think of myself in those situations. I try to think of who am I speaking to.
Yeah, and and forgive me. I ask these questions because you're a young advocate. In
Hmm.
some states, you are at your age now. You are aging out of extended foster care. You know, so as a person who's been doing this for a while, feel much older than I am. Only 26. I wanted to ask, like, what are your tricks to the trade? Like how do you balance, because a lot of times, I'm pretty sure you've have experienced it. You would come from these panels, you get off, getting ready to leave, shaking the heads, and it'll be that one you coming up, and they'd be open, wide open with
Oh
getting
yeah.
through. And, and
Yeah.
you have to because now you kind of after you got off the panel, you put on that unwinding hat. You're like, okay, I'm about to go chill, relax, take some hands. I did what I needed to do. Because a lot of times, I don't know if you do this. When I go into these spaces, I'm like, okay, I prepare myself to share and open those wounds in a professional way, and it's strategic. When I'm like, okay, done, answer questions, I'm walking off. I'm moving myself into, okay, practice some mindfulness, Michael. Center yourself. You open up these. This is, you've done the work, and I'm bringing myself into a more self-care space.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say this for the individuals who dang, I ain't gonna come up to him. Please do. But it kind of shocks you when that happens and you have an individual that shares, openly. And I feel so privileged because one, it takes a lot for someone to have courage and comfortability if they have not shared their story to anyone to come to
Mm-hmm.
you after dang, you really gave me so much strength. And it'd be some people that I never would have imagined that was sitting in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked that because of that, because that happens to me a lot. I'm pretty sure it's happened to you, and I'm pretty sure it's happened to some other advocates listening. You know, what does that look like being in those different spaces, and how do you balance? And I appreciate your answer. Now, go ahead. You look at
I
you.
have something to add to that.
Go
So
ahead.
when I first started, I was actually invited to be a panelist. So that was my very, very first experience. I was being asked questions that dove a little deep, get teary-eyed, open doors that I haven't opened in years. And I remember after that first panel, I'm freshly 19, I believe. No, freshly 20. I had just turned 20. And I had no idea what to expect. I knew the questions beforehand. We had prep beforehand, so I was prepared um to answer the question, but I wasn't prepared for afterwards. I didn't know what to do with myself. And I had people while I was on the panel, people from the audience ask me questions to help them, and I didn't know what to say. I only had the script that I was given, which wasn't really a script. It was just the questions that I was given. I wasn't expecting more. So leaving that space, I try now because I've gone to multiple conferences at this point. I've been able to speak. I've had those opportunities at multiple summits and conferences at this point that I don't try to go into self-care mode mentally until I get into my car. That way, if anybody does have questions, I'm still in that mindset of you're going to be asked more questions. Just be prepared for that. Be prepared for people to walk up to you who you don't know from Adam and just ask you random questions that pertain to their life that you may know something about.
Mm-hmm.
So I I don't know how I managed to go from not knowing what to do to just making sure that I go into self-care mode once I'm in my car because nobody's going to approach me when I'm in my car.
Yeah, somebody after this is gonna beeline after these events. I got one question.
Knock on my window.
Yeah,
I'm just sitting there on my phone.
no,
Huh?
but it's. I personally feel like that's what a lot of individuals who are put into that perspective. They come into this. Okay, I'm just here to advocate, share, uplift my voice and uplift the voices of the individuals who aren't here today. And then it turned into something more after you get off that stage. Sometimes, at least for me, when you have that person coming up to you and looking for support, looking for how did you do it? These questions, and different things like that. I think for myself, that's what struck me to, okay, Michael, you're not, it's, you need to do some research. You need to get some resources. I'm not just here to speak. I'm not just here to be a speaker, and I really meditated on that because I'm like, I try to stay in my lane. I'm, being very real with you because it is therapists out here who went to school to do that, psychology, all this other stuff. Like, so I try to stay in my lane, but also I've been the person where an individual has cut somebody off and that has shunned them from asking for help or, opening up in so many other avenues. So like what I've developed is like when I get those hard hitting, especially when it comes to youth and young adults, I was like, first, I want you to understand, I'm not a therapist. What have you? But these are some tips and tools that I've learned, I've utilized that works for me, but also as everyone has listened to a couple episodes, I always say, like, hey, if something has triggered you in the hit of this podcast episode, I would have you, take some time, practice some mindfulness exercises, and there's a lot of tools and tips on Google, but also you have to go further, sometimes, because a lot of times we stay there at the like tools and tips and don't go nowhere else. And I feel like it's a remedy for a time. It's a remedy for a time. And then you face that one space obstacle. And for some people with lived experience, that may be getting into that first relationship with your partner. And it's an actual healthy relationship, and you don't know how to deal or process with certain things that this person is doing. And you are sitting there triggered with self. And that's just a scenario. I know there are others out there, but that's just a scenario of things where how not really working on the whole of the problem can sprinkle into others. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing about that. I want to get more into, what what made you want to, like, after all you've been through, like, having an okay experience within the system. I say okay. So be like, I want to advocate. I want to essentially help. And I say that, and I say that because I asked this question before, and realistically, when you choose to advocate, there's a level of sacrifice there. There's a level of sacrifice that, okay, as I'm healing, I'm sharing my story. As I'm growing, I'm sharing my story. My story is my own, but also when I'm on the stage, I'm allowing people to be in that story with me. And that's a very vulnerable place to put yourself in, amongst other things that attribute to that sacrifice. So when did you make that decision, and what did that look like?
So you gave me so many, like, just memories. Like, you gave me so many memories. Took me back a minute there. So many good things come to mind when you ask that question because the way that I got into advocacy, it feels like it was slow. Like, I dipped my toes in it at first, but at the same time, it feels like I dove right in. So how it came about is I run a program called AMP, and it's a statewide foster support group. I don't like calling it that, but I don't really know what else to call it. Youth come and, we have fun. We learn things like how to get your license or how to get your documents once you turn 18 or once you age out of the system. And, different avenues to go about that. And we have a whole big binder of all this useful information for youth. And so I was actually in that group as a
Mhm.
youth before I became the facilitator, and I we had a speaker come, and she was actually just on one of your other podcasts. Her name is Kayla Powell. She's from
Mhm.
our Iowa Department of Human Rights, and she came and she did this activity called the Talking Wall, and it was where we talked about things that we would like to change in the system, or if we had already aged out of the system, things that we wished that we had while we were in the system, different kinds of supports, or attorneys making more phone calls, or JCOs reaching out more, or caseworkers, or whatever the case may be. And shortly after that, I was invited to attend the inaugural, no, I lied, not the inaugural summit. It was the Juvenile Justice and Racial Disparities Youth Summit in the state of Iowa. And so I was invited to attend that. And I was invited to help present the talking wall to the people who were there. So I said, yeah, of course. Why not? And then from there, it went to me being invited to apply for our state's JJAX subcommittee, the Youth Justice Council.
Mhm.
And so I applied and, interviewed twice, and I got in. And now I've been a part of that since its inaugural year in 2021. So with that came so many more opportunities to do things that I never would have thought I would have been able or capable of doing. And they were all very, very great. Last year, I got pregnant. It was planned, not like unplanned or anything, but I have a baby now, and they were all very, very great, very, very supportive throughout my entire pregnancy, and even went on a trip across the country while I was pregnant, and they understood when I couldn't go out and do things that they wanted to do because jet lag, and they were just so supportive, and they gave me so many more opportunities to do advocacy work, and I all of a sudden just like grew this little tiny spark that Kayla somehow with the talking wall released inside of me. And now it's this big burning flame, and I have so many great ideas and so many things that I want to do, and so many changes that we have already made just in a year and a half, 2 years. And, last year we were able to see the changes that we were proposing. We actually passed new laws, passed new bills, and changed DHS code. And so seeing that, being a part of that, being able to share my story to get this code change. So now we have foster care to 21. We didn't before. It was 18 and you have extended aftercare and that's it.
All right, now you did it.
Um, so so we were able to get that passed, and some youth who are currently in the system are like, oh, that's BS. Like I don't wanna be in foster care till I'm 21. But then when they get older, they realize, oh, maybe I do. And so they don't see it now, but they will when they get older. And I they'll see that it's voluntary too. So they don't have to, but they can choose to continue receiving supports or whatever the case may be. And so just seeing that change, even like no matter how small, we got awarded our governor's volunteer award twice now. So just seeing that burned like just added fuel to the fire, just made it bigger, made me want to do it more. And so now I literally do it for a living. So I love that. Love that Kayla instilled that in me, and she doesn't even know that she did
What does she do now?
it.
What she do now? Man, and that's crazy because a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people. I think I spoke a while back. A few people who just kept me through it. I started advocating at 15.
Mhm.
Doing the panels, all the different things and stuff like that. But I didn't get into the space
Mhm.
of like traveling national advocacy into like really my adulthood. And conveniently enough, I was
Mhm.
homeless, you know. So I
Mhm.
a few special people, you know, that definitely throughout that time I've mentioned throughout other episodes that really helped me out, you know, and really were there for me. So I definitely can feel that. Um,
Mhm.
and for me, I mention this all the time. This is my ministry, you know. Um, I try to utilize the space and what I do to be a servant, and try to help as many individuals as I can. Because the reality is for me, there's so many people that throughout the pilot programs that I was in, the residential units, you know, all the other boys and individuals, I still see their faces. I still know, like, you know, I'm some of them I'm connected with on Facebook and so forth.
Mhm.
And what they went through has affected their life so much. You know, it isn't as pretty, you know, as some of the others, but
Mhm.
also there's a lot of people who have not made it because
Mhm.
of not being able to handle what they've been through, you know, and whether it was drugs, uh, promiscuity, behavior that came after being sexually abused at an early age, you know, leading into sex trafficking, human trafficking, you know, and all these other scenarios like that are side effects of things that we have been through that you know
Yes.
from the statistics that
Mhm.
after that 18 you get out to that space you be wow look I'm grown, you know, and there's very few people when you age out at 18. I would even say that even entering into the extended foster care space is just it's really different. Like when you spent realistic a lifetime in a system and things have changed, life has changed. You want to play catch up.
Mhm.
Then money is put into your hand to go to important things, but it's like, dang, you ain't never had money to buy yourself stuff.
Mhm.
You know, and as much as you want to be responsible, you in that space of I'm trying to catch up. You
Mhm.
go through that space of trying to figure out who care about you, who like you, the friends, you know, and stuff like that. Like being around people you know don't care nothing about you, but like that's the in crowd, you know,
Right.
on yourself to be in predicaments that you know you don't deserve to be in, you know, and
Mhm.
it's just it's a cycle. So I wanna I wanna uplift that um for a moment and I wanted to share that because there are a lot of people who enter that space and don't find their way out. And I know
Right.
we talked about a couple different things here that is triggering and different things like that. And I don't want to I don't want to trigger
Sorry.
anyone, but also I believe that this is a space where we can talk and have dialogue around these things that affect us in the day to day or the things that we don't talk about that affect us. So
Right.
that we can learn from it, so that we can feel comfortable within it and grow. Um, so just wanted to share that little piece, you know, especially for those individuals that I was in places with, and I know it didn't look it didn't look too good. It you know it still doesn't look too good. So speaking of that, you know, speaking from that, you know, forgive my rambles.
That's okay.
You have been doing this for a minute. You're still growing. You're still healing. You're still thriving, and more. You know,
Mhm.
life is like spring right now for you. Like you are blossoming, blossoming. Can't speak today. Y'all got what I was trying to say. What is next for you in this journey? Like, what is your plans? What is your aspirations?
So currently, I am in a workforce training program, and I'm going to obtain my administrative assistant, administrative. Yeah, administrative assistant certificate, and in the spring, because that's just a 10-week course, and I'm currently in the throes of it. I'm in the middle of it. And it's all basic knowledge, but it's going to help me expand, and it'll help me do my primary job better, which my primary job, it includes a lot of like data entry and things like that, even though I do work directly with youth still with that job. But in the spring, um, because I don't have any current life altering circumstances, my son will be 1 December, so I'm not worried about any new babies right now. And I'll be able to focus on my education. I plan on going back and finishing out my human services degree. So I want to start out kind of small because I did start my degree, but I haven't finished it. So I'm going to get my general course done and then finish my human service core. And then I'm looking to policy. I am really finding out that I enjoy uh, policy and legislative stuff and just everything that they do and all the people that I work with. The majority of them are in policy or they know something about policy, and so that's what I'm looking to. I'm looking to expand on my current knowledge as well as hopefully delve into policy within the next 5 years.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that.
Hmm.
I love policy. I love data and policy. That is my space. So definitely come on over. Come on over. um, I have a few more questions for you as we get ready to end out. And this question, I just developed because,
That's how it goes.
that's it. Look, it's just on the fly. Your and you feel free to pass this. Feel free.
Okay.
Your mother,
Hmm.
you know, how has this experience of this year of being a mother, it probably been longer than that. You were pregnant for a period of time too. So
Yeah,
forgive me for not knowing the proper math.
it's
Uh
okay. It's
for
okay.
a period of time you have been a mother.
Hmm.
And I'm pretty sure, all types of thoughts has came in throughout the pregnancy, you know, um, and now he's here, you know.
Hmm.
he out here moving and everything. Um,
Yep.
what does it look like for you being that mother?
This question's gonna make me tear up a little bit, but I just want to make him proud. I want him to know that I'm doing amazing things to change a system that he will never experience. And I'm instilling in him core values that I wish I had instilled in me when I was a child. So the positive affirmations, the positive self-talk, and all of these things. And I want him to know what consent is, and I want him to know what his body parts are, just in case something happens to him, and he can share that. And I'm facilitating a space, cultivating this open space that I did not get when I was a child, so that he will be able to feel comfortable coming to me. And seeing him become independent, going from being very, very dependent and co-sleeping to him sleeping in his own bed, and just getting bigger and starting to talk and all of this, starting to walk. He's walking way too early, but just seeing all of these milestones and knowing that he feels comfortable becoming independent, that is probably one of my greatest and saddest moments, because it's new territory. There's no manual to parenting. There's good days, there's bad days. Right now he's having a cold, but he's still living his life. He's thriving. He has way more energy than I do. Granted, that's probably because he's 9 months old, but motherhood is a blessing. Parenting and having the opportunity to give him things that I didn't get as a child, make his life better than my life was. Um, it's literally all I could ever ask for. I feel like I was born to be a mother, and now I have found out that I'm also born to be an advocate for youth and to speak up for them. And, no matter what happens, like I want to be a person that people can come to, people can talk to, open up to. If there's something that nobody or a person comes up to me and says something like nobody else knows this, but I felt comfortable enough to share it with you, then I know that I'm doing something right. And motherhood, I think, has just become naturally integrated into what I already do. And like I said, with everything that I wish I knew as a child, I'm instilling that into my child right now, starting at a very, very young age. Like birth was when I started talking about like consent, and he doesn't understand at that time. But I'm raising a beautiful, bouncing, chunky little bilingual baby boy. My husband is Mexican. My son is obviously half Mexican. So I want him to know his culture, even though I may not understand it. I want him to understand his background and be able to surprise people because he looks a little bit more like me than he does his dad. So
I truly appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much for being in this space. Thank you for your vulnerability, your openness. And I truly hope that, for the individuals listening to this, whenever and wherever you're listening, if you experience some of these things that we've talked about, and it's hitting you now in life, whether you've had a therapist in the past, had support, you don't have, feel free. And I'm gonna say this now. I usually wait to the end, but I'm gonna say this now. Feel free if you are looking for support and want, to find what the resources are. I'm here. Don't hesitate to direct message me on one of the social medias. Feel free to email me, whatever that may be, and how you can access me. Feel free. I would love to help you find that place so you can get to that place of thriving and healing for you. And please know that is unique to you. I talk to many different people on here. I ask a question about self-care, mental health, balance, and so forth. It is very much unique to each and every individual who comes on here. Please don't feel that what someone else is doing, is what you need to do or how it needs to look like for you. Because I promise you, some of the things may work, but you're gonna have to find that way and that sweet spot for self, because only you have lived the life that you have lived. Only you know how you hurt outside of what you may explain to the people around you. So take some time. Um, I wouldn't delay in taking that time for self-care. We always could, you can do self-care while you waiting on getting into an appointment, with someone or talking with a friend or a confidant. You can always do that. You always practice mindfulness because these are ready-made tools that are accessible to us at any time. But to get into the work, to do the work, figure out what that looks like for you. I'm here. I'm accessible. Reach me anytime.
I would like to bounce off of that really fast.
Mhm.
I know that in this podcast we talked about a lot of sensitive things that may have triggered some people while listening, and I just want everybody to know that 988, you can call, you can text, um, you can go to their website. There's also the Trevor Project. They have crisis counselors available, and that is more LGBTQ focused. And I just want everybody to know that there are resources out there if you are feeling like suicidal or like self-harming or anything like that. And I want to share that resource 988 just because there is some very sensitive stuff that I have shared today. and I don't want anybody to feel like they're alone while listening.
Thank you so much. And that's very, very much true. Very much true. Um, as I ask my last question, what key point and what piece of advice would you like to leave here today with us?
I would like to leave with everybody knowing that it doesn't matter what you do. If you think that what you're doing is good enough, it is good enough. If you feel like you're not doing enough and you know that your plate is absolutely full, just know that you are doing enough. And sometimes in spaces like this, I get very, very busy and I feel like even with everything that I do, that I'm not doing enough. But recently, I was shown that I was doing enough because I received an award, and it made it feel like I was seen. And just the recognition, if nobody's giving you recognition, I see you, I see what you're doing, and I appreciate everything that you do. You are doing absolutely amazing, and I just want to leave everybody with that because I feel like a lot of people may not hear that and, you know, push themselves to the edge, and I have been there, and I felt very unappreciated, and now I'm in a space where I feel the appreciation, I see the appreciation, and I want everybody else to feel what I feel, that positive, just, "You got this, you can do it."
Thank you so much for sharing that. And, that is very much, in accordance to you as well. I'm going to give you your flowers now. You are doing great work. You are just a phenomenal advocate. I appreciate you being in this space, and this is international. My podcast is international. So we go reach some people in the Philippines to, Canada and stuff like that. So just a testament, that you are doing phenomenal. And to continue to, be on that journey, for yourself. Advocacy, advocacy is a journey of growth. As much as we are, mentoring, supporting, providing advice, insight, it's definitely, especially as a lived experience advocate, you are growing as you continue to do the work. And one thing, if I can share to you, my unsolicited advice for you is to continue to be open and to receive that growth from self.
Thank you.
No, thank you. What last comments do you have? This is a space if you got, a book, a website, social media they can follow, a pop album, rap, whatever EP, I don't know, whatever it is. If you do TikTok on the side, you cut hair, I don't know. For you to share it and to give yourself a shout out, whatever that may be.
Well, I don't really do I don't really do much, but I do have LinkedIn, and I believe that's my full name, Arminta Damken-Navarro. I also have Instagram, feel free to follow that. It's arminta.damken. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So, yeah.
Well, it has truly been a privilege and an honor to have you on. Not just for any old episode, though, because I can't, you are my 100th guest, my 100th episode.
Well, I feel honored.
Look, I feel honored. Look, I don't know how I'm still doing it and still kicking it, but it's truly by God's grace and all of you guys' support. So thank you so much for keeping me going throughout COVID starting this, throughout being sick, throughout facing where I'm gonna stay, to job loss and all these other things, getting new employment. Like these are all the things I faced while building this podcast. I've been doing this for 2 years, and that's for some people. They'd be like, "That's a lot to be going." I probably say I'm okay. I'm enduring this race called life, and God is keeping me, and so many other people like yourself are meant to, encourage me to keep doing this work, encourage me to keep providing spaces like this because it's needed. Those voices need to be heard, but also those individuals that are waiting to hear a voice like yourself and the others that have been on here to know that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay
Mhm.
to work on self. It's okay to be where I'm at life because I know I can get further. Um, that's why I do this. That's why I'm here. So thank you so much. I just want to say, I'm here for support. If anyone needs any resources, anyone has any questions, what have you, feel free to reach out to me. Want to acknowledge cold and flu season is on the rise and coming up. If you're in the Midwest, I know some people don't get snow, but at this point with global warming, everybody and their mama has seen some snow, even in California, Texas, and all these other places. So it's safe to say everybody, just make sure that you're taking care of yourself in the season of viruses and different things like that. Just make sure that you are being safe for your family, for yourself, and by doing that, you are being safe for everybody else. But also, I've been skipping this part. Everybody knows somebody that they can reach out to today that they ain't talked to in a minute. I ain't saying talk to somebody that's toxic for you to talk to. I'm not telling you to talk to somebody that, they gonna do you harm or what have you. I'm saying that one person you just like, you've been busy in the rut, haven't been able to talk to, y'all used to be close, whatever that looks like. Check on them today. Whenever you're listening, just check on them. Say, hey, wanted to make sure you were okay. For my other people, because I don't want to assume everybody's religious that listen. For the people that's religious, ask some people, how can I pray for you? A lot of times we can't offer people money, we can't offer people more than what our words can give. Just ask them, how can I support you? How can I pray for you? you know um and let that be that space. I believe we need to do more to support one another in society instead of separating from each other. With that being said, hope you guys have a good morning, good night, good whenever you're listening to this. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond, Season 3, Episode 12, the 100th episode of Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you. See you guys soon.